Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, lots of different styles, and I think it's fair to describe this brewery as being one of the kind of older and more well-established ones here in Sweden. So it's always nice to try the new stuff that they're putting out there. So for this review then, we are going to head to Dalarna County up to the northwest of Stockholm. And to be specific, we're going to a little place called Hedemora. So that, of course, is home to Oppigårds Bryggeri, and we're going to have a look at one of their winter beers that they released that I didn't get a chance to look at yet. So to give it its full name, this beer is the Vinter 2020-2021 Baltic Porter. Or in English, it's the Winter 2020-2021 Baltic Porter. It comes in at 8% ABV, so I think it's probably fairer to describe this one as an Imperial Porter, to be honest with you. And this is one of two beers that they released for the winter. I think this was released on the 1st of December 2020, if I remember rightly. You saw me review the IPL a few videos back, and that was really nicely done. So fingers crossed this beer is as good as the last one, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. Yeah, I've had some really good beers from Oppigårds over the years, as I said, but probably the classic beers I would recommend you try from these guys would be the Turbo Double IPA, the Turbo Stout as well. Those are like old school West Coast type craft beers, but then you also have the New Sweden IPA, which is one of the first New England IPAs that was released here just after the Stigbergets ones. So yeah, that's a really nice one, and it's definitely those kind of three beers for me are, you know, properly kind of old school Swedish things. Actually very, very nice. I always try and get people to try those ones if they get the chance. But yeah, it's always nice to try different beers from these guys. They've been putting out a few new IPAs and things like that over 2020, so I'm curious to see what they're going to release in 2021 as well. But yeah, fingers crossed this is a good beer, and like I said earlier, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, let's go for it then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Oppigårds Bryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Oppigårds Bryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So Oppigårds Bryggeri, as I've told you before, was founded back in 2003 in Hedemora, which is to the northwest of Stockholm in Dalarna County, quite close to Borlänge and Falun. Home to Sabaton, of course, one of Sweden's greatest bands. I love those guys. But this brewery sits on the 250-year-old Falkström family farm, and the original one was in a small wooden building, which was apparently constructed back in 1896. And this space was originally used for flax dressing, but also for the great-grandfather's metalsmithing business. All of the beers were originally brewed in this old building, but they added another building that was a malt house, and they now have a very shiny and newly constructed brewery that they're operating out of. But like I said, the brewery itself was founded back in 2003 by Björn Falkström, and he wanted to revive his family farm, but he also wanted to bring back the tradition of the Swedish farmhouse ales. And these beers were actually the norm in Sweden until you started to get the modern kind of generic lager breweries scaling up and things in the 1800s. And this made the farmhouse beers really unprofitable actually, and they just kind of ceased to exist. But this brewery has become very popular over the years, and this has allowed the Falkström family to continue to make their living on the farm as they've done since the 1700s. In the first year, they produced only around 8,000 litres of beer and just sold it very locally around the Hedemora area, but now they're producing over 1 million litres of beer. They've got a new Italian brew kit in this brewery, and they can produce at maximum at 2.5 million litres of beer per year. This brewery's just been gradually invested in over the years, and it's been scaled up and up and up. So yeah, you can find Oppigårds beers in pretty much any Systembolaget throughout Sweden. I'm not sure if they are exporting much. I'm not sure if some of these beers go to Norway or to Finland. or whatever. But yeah, you can find these beers pretty much all across Sweden, and they are one of the most recognizable craft beer names. You know, if you think the old school breweries in Sweden, it would be, you know, Nynäshamns Bryggeri, Närke Bryggeri, and then you've got these guys as well, Oppigårds Bryggeri. So yeah, these guys have done some really nice beers over the years. You'll always find one or two of them in your local Systembolaget. But as of February 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 110 different kinds of beer, and yeah, they're always releasing new stuff actually. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Probably the best beers I've had from these guys. The Norn Pale Ale is very nice. This new Sweden IPA, and then the Turbo Double IPA and the Turbo Stout are very good as well. Yeah, and recently, quite recently, they did a few sort of German style beers, a Hefeweizen, a Dunkel, and a Pilsner. I can't remember which one of those I actually managed to publish, because I had problems with my memory card corrupting, which was annoying, and I lost a couple of videos on that. But hey ho, that's what happens. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Oppigårds Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, that is us done with the brewery notes then, and we can focus on the beer itself. So yeah, as you can see, the artwork on this one is very, very similar to what you'll see on other Oppigårds beers. It stayed fairly constant over the years, to be honest with you. They've kind of modernised the text and sort of just sharpened up the label and things, but you know, the Oppigårds beers have been quite similar. They changed the bottle caps, of course, because they used to have a star on them, if I remember rightly. Used to be like a green star that was on them, so they've gone for these kind of slightly slicker, more modern ones now. But yeah, 330ml bottle, this one. It says on the back here, Baltic Porter has its roots in the Baltic countries, but this one is derived, this particular one is derived from the English Porter, with a little bit of inspiration from the Russian Imperial Stout. The beer is dark red, it's dark red in colour, very dark red in colour I think it's saying, but it's got an aroma and taste that makes you think of caramel and nuttiness, with you know, a roasted background basically, and then it tells you a little bit about the brewery itself underneath, but we've gone over that already. But yeah, you can see on the bottom here, this is one of the touches I always like about the Oppigårds beers. You can see Björn Falkström's signature there. Nearly saying his family signature, no, it's his signature. But yeah, nicely presented. I do like these beers. It is, you know, there is something about it. It's nice to have a bottle. Like, a lot of beers are in cans these days. Every so often it is nice to have a beer in a bottle, and I do appreciate that when you have the German stuff, the half-litre bottles. I really like that. But yeah, an 8% Imperial Porter, this one, limited release apparently. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. Oh, this one I thought didn't want to open there, but it's okay, definitely okay. But yeah, let's get this guy out and into the glass. An 8% Imperial Porter, released for winter 2021. I don't drink too many porters these days, but it's always nice to have them every so often. Basically, you know, a porter is essentially just a lighter mouthfeel version of a stout, to be honest. It's almost the kind of equivalent of a German Schwarzbier in many ways. I was not, you know, it's kind of interesting, because in England obviously you've got the golden ales and things like this, you know, maybe those are the equivalent of the German Helles. You've got the mild, which is kind of like a Dunkel, and then you've also got the porters and things, which is more like a Schwarzbier. But of course the English ones are ales, you know, higher temperature fermentation, whereas the German ones are lagers, lower temperature fermentation. So yeah, top fermenting yeast and bottom fermenting yeast respectively. So yeah, top fermenting ales in England, bottom fermenting lagers in Germany. But yeah, I can certainly see what they mean about that deep red colour that this beer has. Just before the head disappears though, this poured with about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say light kind of fawny coloured head. It looks very, very nice. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head, and as I say, it is just fading away to be a very thin kind of foamy layer. If we shine the light through this, it's definitely a very, very deep ruby colour, this one. Absolutely very, very deep ruby. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera, but yeah, very, very, very deep ruby, this one. It's crystal clear as well, which I don't remember getting from a lot of porters, come to think of it. But yeah, it also, I forgot to mention earlier, it does tell you about the malt base in this one. So this one contains Pilsner malt, roasted malt and caramel malt. Nice combination, and it's got Cascade, Amarillo and Hercules in it. So Cascade, as we know, about 8% alpha acid, the original Yakima Valley hop from the States. Amarillo's got a lovely kind of oily orangey character to it, about 12% alpha acid, again from the States. And then Hercules is a German hop which has, I want to say, 6 or 7 alpha acid. It's slightly stronger than your standard Hallertau Tettnanger sort of things. So yeah, this is an interesting one actually. That is, there's no English hop in this one. They use a German hop, Hercules, which I'm guessing Hercules might well be the kind of bittering hop in this one. And well, Cascade, I suppose, can function as a bittering hop, but I would guess that Amarillo is probably the late addition to give you the kind of flavours. Remember, when it comes to beers and stuff, it's all about the timing of adding the hops. But yeah, the colour of this one, I have to say, is absolutely lovely. Remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on, 1, the type of malts you use, 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker thus you get a darker colour out of the beer. But again, it depends on the malts you use in the first instance. But yeah, this looks like a really nice it looks like a really nice beer, this one. So yeah, looks great. So let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Nothing particularly surprised about this beer when you consider the aroma. So yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, this one's actually quite interesting. It comes across, I don't know, if I was to smell this, I'd be like, what is that? The aroma of this one's actually quite unusual compared to other porters that I've come across. If I was blind smelling this, I wouldn't be able to tell you what that is straight off the bat. Yeah. So in the aroma, I mean, I'm trying to sugar it up and just see if with a porter, you normally expect a wee bit of a toasty kind of bread, like well-fired bread crusty sort of thing. But you actually don't get so much of that out of this beer. For me, it actually comes across as really caramelly. Yeah, it comes across as really sort of caramelly, good bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of thing in there, and you can smell that the sugars are fairly caramelized, like treacly and molasses. So you definitely get a lot of that, but you don't get so much of that classic black malty. You don't get so much of that kind of classic black malty porter thing out of this. It almost smells a little bit more like a Dunkel. It actually almost smells a little bit more like a German Dunkel, this, or even a Doppelbock. I did not expect that from this beer. Yeah, I'm just checking that my nose is clear. Yeah. Yeah, I really don't get a lot of roastiness out of this beer at all, and that's not what I expected. So, I mean, it is, it really is more along the lines of like, an English mild, a German Dunkel, or, a Doppelbock. It's like a really, Czech Cherny's the other one. It's really, just really oily and caramelly and sweet in the aroma, and I did not expect that out of this beer at all. You can pick up 1 or 2 sort of woody aromas underneath. There's a wee bit of nuttiness in there. Like I say, there's a lot of brown sugar to this one. It's got a nice oily, highly caramel. It's not madly caramelized, but there's a wee bit of that kind of slightly treacly note to it. But it actually smells quite like a Doppelbock, honestly. I mean, it's got Pilsner malt in it. That's probably what's giving you some of the biscuity notes in this. There's definitely a McVitie's digestive biscuity thing going on. But yeah, it really is very Dunkel, Doppelbocky like, this one. The aroma notes out of this are just really nice, actually. I love how this goes together. Yeah, as I said, when it's a Baltic porter, an imperial porter, whatever you want to say, you do expect just a wee bit more roastiness out of it than this. This really is more like a mild, a Dunkel or a Doppelbock or a Czech Cherny. It's very caramelly. I'm curious to see how that translates into the taste, but I am a little bit confused by the aroma. But yeah, 1 or 2 nutty notes in there, a little bit of woodiness, lots of kind of big oily brown sugar, bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing as well. But yeah, it goes together really, really nicely. The aroma, the malt base here, is great. It comes together very, very nicely, I have to say. So yeah, just not what you'd expect from a porter. But yeah, hoppy side of things then. Let's look at the hops. For me, again, the hoppiness in this beer. There's a wee bit of earthiness, which I'm guessing that you get a bit. It's quite a bright and smooth earthiness, and that'll be the Hercules that's giving you. I think Cascade can sometimes give you a wee touch of that as well. But yeah, you get a wee bit of that. You can smell quite a nice big floral component to it. Again, that's going to be Hercules and Cascade. Amarillo, of course, will contribute, but I suspect that Amarillo will be being used as the late addition hop in this beer. Remember, if you add the hops early on during the wort boil, that gives you a lot of the bitterness, and you've got a trade-off over the period of the wort boil where the bitterness becomes less favoured and you get more flavour and aroma, so bear that in mind. So there's quite a lot of interesting things going on with this beer for sure. The aroma that comes out of it, I think, on the hoppy side of things, is really interesting as well. But the more and more that I smell of it, the deeper the floral kind of notes of the beer become, which I really quite enjoy. You've got a nice big green component in this one for sure. There's a little bit of a kind of grassy kind of zestiness at the front of the nose there, and then you've got a lot of kind of nice, just brown sugary kind of phenolic kind of things coming out of this beer as well, which I did not expect. So yeah, you get a wee bit of that kind of medicinally phenolic-y kind of thing out of it, almost like you get from the Belgian Dubels and Quadrupels. Actually, it's got a wee bit of that sort of almost very slightly cakey phenolic kind of thing. There's just a little bit of that in here. It's not quite big as it is in those Belgian styles, right enough, but there is just a wee bit of it there. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, you've got a good bit of plum in there. You've got a wee touch of a sharper raisin. There is definitely some kind of figgy notes in there, and that'll be the Cascade that's giving you that. And you do get a bit of the oily orange from the Amarillo, but yeah, it's quite a red fruity beer, this one. Fig, a wee bit of a blackberry sort of thing, some plum and raisin. It's really interesting how all of that goes together. Actually, it's the aroma of this beer is not what I expected at all, and I love it when you get beers like this that just, there's something interesting going on with them. So yeah, I think this one will be quite an interesting beer to taste. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and just ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. So this one is the Vinter Shugi Baltic Porter, coming in at 8% ABV from Oppigårds Bryggeri in Hedemora in Dalarna County here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, no, this is interesting for sure. Yeah, this is not what you expect in the flavour either. I'm going to say this is a nice beer. I don't think I would guess this is a porter. I really don't think I would guess that this is a porter from tasting it blindly either. In fairness, it does get a little bit more kind of roasty and toasty. It's got porter characteristics to it. But I think, in fairness, and this is one of the kind of catch-22s of this whole beer tasting game, if you like. You'll get beers like this, and beer doesn't have to stick to any one style category and things. It's a little bit of a misnomer that it does. But this one really is. It is a little bit more like a kind of mild, like an English mild. Yeah. It really is more like just like quite a strong English mild. But the main question should be, is it a good beer? Yeah, I like it. I do like it, but Baltic Porter, I do struggle with that a little bit, because there's quite, there is with Hercules and Pilsner malt being in here, it does have a significant bit of German character to it. But it's just, you can kind of tell from the mouthfeel and stuff that it's not quite a lager, if that makes sense. So yeah. I certainly like this though. I'm going to say thumbs up to Oppigårds for doing something like this. But yeah, it's definitely not a classic porter. It's definitely not a kind of classic Baltic porter by any stretch of the imagination. Although, you know, I've said this about some beers and things before, like, oh, it's, you know, maybe there's a different aspect to some of these Baltic porters. Maybe you can get ones that are more kind of brown sugary leaning, but when it comes to a porter, I always expect, you know, something that's got a wee bit of like a kind of toasty, bread crusty backbone to it. It's quite smooth. It's like a slightly thicker German Schwarzbier, basically. I don't really expect something that is kind of more brown sugary, like this one is, if that makes sense. But yeah, let me know your own experiences in the comment section below. Maybe this is a side to porters that I've just not seen yet. So yeah. And like I say, this is a style that you don't come across all that much these days. So yeah, where to start with this one? Yeah. So let's try and break down the flavour and describe this one for you then. Straight away with this beer, you can feel a nice bit of a kind of bread crusty quality just blanket in the middle of your palate. Now that bread crusty note is not like really well fired and things as you would maybe expect from a porter, but it does have a bit of toastiness to it. It's almost like the crust you get on like a rye bread, for example. So yeah. So yeah, you do get a lot of that out of this beer. It really has the bread crusty notes that you get out of this one are really nice. And one of the things that I think I didn't quite get on to saying earlier on was that you do, you know, in fairness, the further that you go into the aftertaste with this beer, you do start to get, it does dry out in the middle of the palate, and it does give you a few hints of a kind of roasty, toasty, malty side of it. But it's really, this beer is more about the bread and the brown sugars for me than anything else. It definitely is. But yeah, you do feel a wee bit of a kind of toasty barley grain sort of thing in the middle of your palate there. Like I say, you've got the kind of bread crusty notes, so it's like a toasty rye bready bread crust kind of thing there. Then you've got a bit of brown bread just sitting on top of it. So yeah, this is for sure an interesting beer, absolutely. This one, I really like it. It's really growing on me. The more that I drink of this one, the more that it starts to grow on me. And you know, it is. It really does just. It's like a toasty doppelbock. It really is a doppelbock with a slightly more toasty character in some ways. But like I say, it's, well, a doppelbock's a lager, so maybe it's better to describe it as a slightly toasty English mild, something like that. So yeah. It's definitely an interesting beer, this one. In the middle of your palate, you get a nice kind of brown sugary note there. It's got quite a sort of more oily, highly caramelised thing about it. The brown sugars that you get in the centre of your palate here are a little bit treacly almost. But then yeah, as you move kind of further out from the centre of your palate, it gets a little bit more. It does get a wee bit more kind of biscuity, like McVitie's digestive like and things. So yeah, I really appreciate about that as well. I really appreciate how that goes together. Yeah, so definitely quite highly treacly, molassesy kind of notes in the very centre of your palate. It gradually brightens up and becomes a little bit more regular and caramelly then. As I say, out towards the edge of the palate, it does get a wee bit more kind of biscuity and things. When you go to the front corners of the palate, and you go kind of when you go to the front corners of the palate, then go back the way, you do get a nice little bit of woodiness out of the beer, and there's a wee touch of kind of nuttiness coming out of this one too. There is just a wee touch of that, but yeah, it's a very bready kind of beer, this one for sure. Yeah, and the malt base, of course, is the focus of this one. But yeah, if you go to that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel the bread crusty, grainy sort of thing intensifies a little bit. Then on the back part of the palate, you can see the breadiness just kind of thickens up there a wee bit. So I do appreciate how that side of the beer goes together too. But yeah, on the back corners of the palate then, there's a nice little bit of earthiness there as you move further forward. The earthiness, I think, will probably be from the Hercules, and it's not the earthiness isn't really too prominent. It quite quickly moves to be a bit more kind of floral and bright. So you do get a nice kind of quite deep floral aromaticity to this one, which I'm guessing would be more from the American hops. The German hops tend to have quite a bright floral aromaticity, and you can get a wee bit of that as you reach the front corners of the palate there. But then, yeah, around the front curve of the palate, it's definitely a little bit lighter and grassy. There's a wee touch of kind of zestiness and things there, which is great. But yeah, the green side of the beer I think suits the rest of it quite well, and it is, the green side of the beer in fairness I think is quite German, to be honest with you, but it's got a wee bit of American depth to it, if that makes sense. But yeah, the front third of your palate then, the fruity side of this beer, yeah, so on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a nice little bit of a bread crusty sort of thing there, a bit more of a toasty grainy note. Underneath that you've got a nice sort of brown rye bready type quality to the to the beer as well. So I like how that side of things goes together. But yeah, on the sort of front third of your palate, as I always say, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. But on the fruity side of things, on the fruity side of things, if you go towards the back in that front third of your palate, you get a wee bit you do get a wee tiny touch of a raisiny sharpness, a bit of a plummy kind of note. But the main base of the fruits part of this beer is the Cascade. You get that. You do get a wee touch of a kind of grapefruity note, which is the Cascade again in this one. But as you move further forward, you get those lighter, almost figgy elements of the Cascade, and then on the front half of that front third of your tongue, you get a little bit of the orange. The Amarillo is a big oily orangey hop, always in its fruity characteristics. And then as you reach the very kind of tip of the tongue, you'll get a little bit of the blackberry, blackcurranty sort of things in there too. But yeah, this beer for sure is something really kind of interesting and quite unique in a lot of ways. So yeah, this is definitely one that's going to challenge you a little bit and make you think about what exactly is going on. But the fruity side of it I think is nice. Bit of orange, bit of a light figgy sort of thing, and then some other kind of red and berry sort of type fruits as well. So thumbs up to Oppigårds for the beer overall. As I say, I wouldn't necessarily market this one as a Baltic porter. But as I said earlier on in the review, maybe this is a side of the porter that I've not really encountered yet. You can always have this kind of thing, but it strikes me more as being a little bit like an English mild in a lot of ways, like a stronger English mild. That's what I would say about this one, to be honest with you. So yeah, English mild is basically the equivalent of like a Dunkel or a Doppelbock. So it's got the strength of a Doppelbock, but maybe more of the flavour profile of an English mild in a way. But as a winter beer, I think it stands up very, very well. So yeah, interesting beer from Oppigårds, and the quality of it speaks for itself. It's solidly done. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, what would we say about this one? Yeah, it's kind of top end to mid-bodied, bottom end to full-bodied. Smooth carbonation, oily, bit slick, absolutely. The hoppy side of the beer, I would say, yeah, in terms of bitterness, hoppy bitterness and things, I think it's a 25-30 IBU beer. It's something like that. This beer is not going to blow the head off you in terms of bitterness. It is a more malt forward style, of course, although porters can usually give you a bit of bitterness from the kind of black malty side of things, and you do get a bit of dryness out of this beer in that sense, but not a crazy amount. But yeah, the malt base has a bit of smoothness underneath it, a bit of toastiness, and it's got a lovely kind of sweetness in there as well. But yeah, it goes together really nicely in that sense. Like the malt base, I think, it's got the dark big caramelized brown sugars. It's got a bit of bready sweetness underneath and things. It's a really well balanced malt base in this one. The fruits are nice and oily and a bit slick at the same time. But yeah, this beer gets a thumbs up from me. It's hard to kind of describe this one as a Baltic porter in honesty, but whatever it is, as I say, I think if I was hedging bets, I would go for a slightly stronger English mild. Whatever it is, It's another solid done beer from Oppigårds, and this is what we've kind of come to expect from them. So yeah, thumbs up to them for that. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this review then. An interesting one for sure. So yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Oppigårds Bryggeri. Let me know what you think about the sweeter porters and things like this. I know you can get very sweet porters, but more caramelly orientated ones I think is an interesting subject. So yeah, let me know if there's any other porters you've encountered like that. But this one was the Vinter Shugi Baltic Porter from Oppigårds Bryggeri in Hedemora in Dalarna county here in Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers, catch you guys on the next one.